Patrick. Thank you. Nicely done. All right. Today we're here just to talk about disruptive innovation and what that means in television. Disruptive innovation is a regular and recurring theme today. The stock market, traditional print media, the music industry, the travel industry, even the way we shop is radically different now than it was even 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. The television industry is now experiencing this same radical disruption. In its infancy, television was the disruptor, and it redefined how we live. It was so profound that it was known as the era of television. And this new technology, when it cropped up, it created entrepreneurs and innovators. And they said, wow, I'm going to borrow some money, and I'm going to go create a television studio. And they put up RF antennas and transmitters, and out they went. And they started popping up and competing for local audiences, and then they started to trade their programming because they couldn't create enough. They had this new TV camera, but they didn't know what to do with it. Some people just put a puppet in front of it, right? So they traded with the guy next to them, the city next door, and then 3 companies started to emerge. And they grew exponentially, and we all know their names today. We've got CBS, NBC, and ABC. They regularly racked up our ratings. In the 1950s and 60s, the average rating for a television show was 41.64. That's the top-rated television shows. So if you imagine for sample errors, you're talking about a full 50% of viewers watching television were watching one show. That average dropped a little bit in the 70s, right? It became a 31.04. And why did it drop? Simply because there was a little more competition and saturation was greater. There were more TVs, more people watching. And so by then, you're talking about 31 million people were watching the top-rated show. And this was a thriving business with really very little competition until the 1980s. I went backward. The arrival of cable and satellite television, and since then, the business has had to radically adapt. They went from 3 major network channels to hundreds of cable channels, dividing and segmenting their viewing audience. And they did this because of profit. The only place to advertise and reach an audience of any magnitude was in television. Huge dollars were pouring into these big 3 networks, and other people wanted a piece of the pie or a place at the trough. And they had access to their own advertising to push their own product. So if you did a show, you could reach 30 million people during that show to press your next show. About the same time as cable came in, the regimented schedules set by broadcasters were disrupted. First by VHS, and then more completely by the DVR in 1999. They took an analog recording and they made it digitally accessible, so audience could, for the first time, kind of watch their programs when it was convenient for them to do so. A bunch of new technology, a fancy new term, and time shifting became commonplace. This had a precipitous drop in the ratings, with a 20.86 average in the 1990s for the top-rated shows, is now 1/2 of the ratings in the 60s. And it was a 16.09 in the 2000s, now 1/2 of the ratings in the 1970s. So every 30 years, the business was having again. Admittedly, this is in terms of the top-rated episode. Well, this gave the networks, you can see, 30 years time to learn and adapt. Right? They buy their own cable networks. They make their own home shopping network. They buy them, they acquire them, or they adapt to them. Well, then a sea change arrived. In June 12, 2009, the FCC finally mandated that the industry change their broadcast standards from Ntsc to Hdtv. Right? This took they started the process of taking bandwidth away from television and giving it over to data-packed communications. This meant that the government, and some admittedly very smart engineers, could see that television was becoming less of an important way to distribute information and entertainment. And they were right. Because this enabled on-demand television, and it finally freed the consumer from appointment television. You see, right now, or up till now, even today, the networks are based on the grid. It's one-stop shopping for each one of you. Try to reach everyone, every night, and keep them hooked on your channel. If you have a bomb at 9 o'clock, right, that negatively affects the ratings for 10 o'clock, which then affects the affiliate news. Well, we can't have that, right? So everyone gets very excited. How do I make sure that doesn't happen? Well, the result of this time shifting and this watching on demand has made the last 3 years, the average rating for the top-rated television show was 9.9. Almost half again, and this time it took less than 10 years. That's radical disruption. They don't have any more time to adapt, right? So let's imagine why they did this, right? This is a graph that shows you the average season every year that each network goes through in order to get television shows on the air. Each year, the big four networks, we include Fox now, each take approximately 500 pitches. So that's 2,000 pitches. Imagine the infrastructure involved and the cost involved in that process, right? Each you have a development staff, a marketing staff, agents, talent relations, managers. You have lawyers to make sure all the contracts happen, right? And they take 500 network pitches, and then they decide, okay, they whittle it down to 70 scripts. And they decide, oh, these 70 scripts, they fit pretty well into the time slots that we need. We know that Seinfeld's going down. We got to get this show. So they're trying to work all that out, right? From that, they decide to make 20 pilots. So from 500, they're already down to 20, right? This sets off a bidding war because, after all, they're all trying to achieve the same goal. They each want the same kind of viewer at 9 o'clock, the same kind of viewer at 10 o'clock. So then they need the same star to be in it. They need the same writers to write it because they have had track records at proving they know how to do it. So they all go out, and that just drives up the cost, right? So of these pilots, they order an average 4 to 8 new series depending on the needs of that particular season. NBC just made news because they ordered a gazillion. Each pilot can cost between $2 and $6 million. And then they start marketing those pilots. And they spend a lot more marketing than they ever did on the whole process previous to this point, right? So, for all this effort, for this $60 to $100 million that they can spend on each season, there will only be 1 to 2 shows that survive for more than that one season, and most are canceled before they reach 5 to 10 episodes, right? So if this entire process cost them $60 million, they would go, this season was a bargain, right? And why? Well, if I were a network executive and I had each 30-second spot being worth an average of $108,956, right? You better believe I'd be pretty antsy to make a hit too. I don't want to lose money at 9 and then at 10. So with that big of an upside, 60 to 100 million doesn't seem like that much money, right? But does it make sense in light of the decreased ratings we've been talking about? Meanwhile, the opposite is true with bandwidth viewing. The internet's creating new ways to access film and video content, and it's exponentially multiplying those options. The percentage of households with cable or satellite television is declining for the first time in the history of television. Think about that. Since the 1950s, everyone was going up, building. Now, it's going straight down. But YouTube-generated content and new distribution channels, like Netflix and Vugaroo, they're producing proprietary content that is more celebrated than their rival network offerings. All of this has created a new kind of viewer, of which many in this audience are probably cord cutters. And if you're like many of the people coming up now, you're cord nevers. You have never had a satellite or cable connection, nor do you want one. So incidentally, Netflix and Vugaroo, they don't provide ratings, right, for these shows because they've disrupted the advertising model. They care very greatly, but they don't want to have a race with somebody else for higher ratings. They're not driving the price of their advertising up because they get more viewers than the next one. No, they're on a low price point subscription model, right? They want it to be, it's harder for you to cancel your $9 a month Netflix account. It's just not worth it. You'd rather just keep it going, right? The price is really low. So now what they do is they want to make great quality content. And they want to make that content and allow it time to find an audience, and the audience time to find it. Meanwhile, the traditional television industry has been focusing on trying to fix these radical changes, and then all of a sudden they're losing ground in their traditional distribution as well. In July, Univision swept ABC, NBC, and Fox with their lineup of no-repeat novellas. I think you heard I do novellas and soap operas, right? So that's very interesting to me. Given all of this information, it's easy to see who's adapting to this new technology and the new customer. The constantly changing television business is under assault and in a two-front war for survival. And are we watching the death of these big companies? Will they adapt or will they die? And isn't there just some young executive screaming in the boardroom, listen up, this will change everything? Well, of course there are. And many books have been written about companies' failure to adapt to radical disruption. The short answer is these are very big companies with complicated revenue models, and they have huge moving parts and agendas, and they're slow to change, they resist change, and change is feared and difficult. So what they tend to do is raise their advertising rates to keep their profit margins the same, instead of looking at the smaller slice of the market. There's not a revenue carrot for them to go after in the smaller markets. So all of this leads to profound questions about the future of video entertainment. Will this business be around in 10 years? What will it look like? What are the opportunities for innovators and new businesses who can take advantage of this rapidly changing landscape? And most importantly, how can you be that innovator? What do you have that the big networks don't? Well, I call this how to prove a murder. How to prove a murder of the big television business, right? Well, if you're going to prove a murder, you need three things. You need means, motive, and opportunity. And those are the same things you need to be an entrepreneur. So let's start with opportunity. We need to know whether or not television as we know it is ceasing to exist. Is it really dissipating, right? Or is it that the audiences are still there and there's just bigger opportunity and you just have to find them? Well, we know that there's a huge pile and pie of potential customers, and it's only getting bigger. Currently, there's a $2.2 trillion business for what you do in your living room. That includes gaming and a lot of other stuff, right? We also know that 65% of people are visual learners, and that percentage is growing with every passing year. We are a visual society, and we are craving visual intake to both entertain us, educate us, sell us. Everything we want is visual. In the industrialized nation, the ones with all the lights, bandwidth at saturation is currently at 50%, and we know that growth is assured. There's going to be more bandwidth. We saw that graph going up, right? The growth among the areas without a lot of those lights is really incalculable. Right now, Africa, for example, has 1 billion people, and they are all poised to come online. I was just there. They all have smartphones. It's just growing. So in terms of opportunity, it would seem we're rich, right? But are all of these people going to want content? Yes. Are they going to want the same content? No. So we know that if you take the technological revolution, which is increased free time, we add thousands of traditional television channels, billions of websites, and traditional big businesses like Random House and Procter & Gamble, who are grappling with how to reach their customers and update their products to a visual consumer. And you combine that with the exploding access points of smartphones and e-books and billboards, and you multiply that with the existing cultures and all their languages, and then you throw in the fact that the average person is craving video to learn and be entertained. And I'm pretty sure we established opportunity. So traditional television is in decline, to be sure, but we see that the need for all kinds of video content is exploding. In fact, it's the new frontier. It's the way money is going to be made. Right now, every business you can think of has to produce content or advertisements that target ever smaller sections of society. The same advertisement, television show, and interactive book has to be produced in multiple ways with multiple demographics in mind and multiple languages. Exponentially more video must be created, and so the video production market has to expand to fill this need. So, on to motive. Why do we feel the need to get in this business, right? Is it just the money? Well, yeah, of course. We all want to make the money. But everyone knows that right now the only really way to make a small fortune in the film and television business is to start with a big one, right? It's just like the oil business. Why choose this one, right? It's not made at an office or at a desk, right? It's a lot of work and it's really risky. But like oil, most have been in it for a huge return. And clearly, now that's being disrupted too. You have to write, produce, shoot, edit, market, and then hope you find your audience, right? You want to hope you strike oil. Your product might fail and you might have to start all over again. And if professionals are creating 1 to 2 hits out of 500 pitches, and the film business is creating great losses like Mars Needs Moms and John Carter, how are you, the independent entrepreneur, supposed to do any better? Well, then again, you could strike it rich. The upside, like oil, is remarkable. Films like The Blair Witch Project they're beacons of hope to independent filmmakers everywhere. It cost $25,000 to make, $750,000 to edit and market, and it made $248 million. Wow, that's a great upside. I want to go into that business. But there's too much risk, right? Why choose that? I'd rather stay at my desk. I don't want to lose that much money. Well, let's consider the outreach that's possible with media, right? Social outreach. For example, one of the projects on which I consult is set to air in Africa to over 100 million people. The series' goal is to use entertainment as a way to create jobs while educating and speak to the many health, gender, and civic issues facing Africans. Let's just watch just for a second.
Nous y voilà. La quête est lancée pour trouver celle qui interprétera le rôle de la jeune sage-femme à 6 ans et de ceux qui l'accompagneront pour donner vie au quartier populaire de Ratanga. La campagne C'est la vie utilise le format des feuilletons télévisés afin d'informer par le divertissement le grand public de Madagascar à Dakar. Les femmes et les sages-femmes sont les principales héroïnes de ce feuilleton panafricain.
Je suis votre nouvelle collègue, s'il vous plaît. Vous pourriez au moins me faire visiter le centre, me dire quel sera mon travail?
They taped them all in order to do videos like this to try to get outreach and get more money
Et puis
to
vous
produce
voyez
their series.
ces femmes dont je dois
And
m'occuper.
C'est la vie offers an uninhibited look at human condition in Africa.
Ce que j'aime dans le fait de
It's
raconter les histoires,
complex,
c'est
it's
justement
unvarnished, it's colorful, and it's surprising. And that's the head writer, and she's from France. She's an amazing writer. And she's saying that using humor, she's going to focus on these characters, right? And she's going to try to affect hopes and dreams of the people in Africa while lacing in maternity care as a way to reduce infant mortality, as a way to reduce HIV and to promote women's equality. I can't think of a faster way to reach these people than with media. On their smartphones, in the middle of Africa, they're going to be watching this series. Imagine the difference that you can make with one series. So, that's great for social outreach, right? But if I'm going to lose my shirt, why do I want to get into this business? Well, in order to answer that question, we need to look at the money. How is the money going to be made and spent in the future as opposed to in the past? So in other words, do we have the means to commit the crime? In order to evaluate whether we have the means, we have to consider what we need to achieve our goal. With all of these potential viewers, who are they and how will they access content? Do we have the means to get our product to them the way we need to get it to them? I mean, how are you going to want your media? I know I'm going to be in the living room, yeah, and I'm going to be in the kitchen, yeah, and I'm going to be in my car and in line at the bank and with my kids playing baseball. And the answer is I'm going to want more media instantly. And I want my media as good as I can get it wherever I am. So does that mean tethered to a big screen? Yes. Tethered to a computer, a tablet, a smartphone? Yep. Every single one of them. So people want what they want, where they want it, when they want it, and how they want it. Big surprise, right? So now we know that we need more content, more variety, and more competition. I asked a very wealthy man once when he would have enough money. And his answer was, when I have more. And that's really the whole point of content, too. So we need to produce more content faster, more content cheaper, and more content at an ever-increasing quality point, right? That gives birth to niche marketing. The old shotgun approach of spending a lot of money up front to create a guaranteed hit, trying to please everyone and keep the audience following a whole night of programming is going to become extinct. It's on its way. You can see the numbers now. The new game is this kind of program. Can you create great content and find an audience for it? Can you compete in this new programming world? Right? Well, let's ask, what kind of show do you want to make? Right? Choose a show that you're going to produce that's going to reach a very specific audience. Because as we've established, there is a huge audience, and broadband gives you the way to reach them. So if I'm going to do a show for diabetics at Colorado College, I'm not going to make a lot of money, right? But I could make a show for diabetics of all college age throughout the United States and the rest of the world. Now I've got a big audience. It's not the best example, but the point is I'm trying to give you the one thing that kind of transcends a whole group of people, right? So if you're talking about that huge client base, which was the basic business for Netflix, they couldn't get big movies when they started, so they went after documentaries and foreign films, and by increasing that marketplace and finding that person that they wanted, they were able to make a lot of money. So now you know what show you want to make. You have to figure out what the consumer expects for the product you want to deliver. You have to look at the competition. Can you outproduce the competition at high enough quality and a low enough price point to make a difference, right? And to make money. What is quality? Success in television entertainment has always been due to premium content. YouTube's announced a $100 million investment in premium channels. Netflix plans for a $185 million investment in original content. But what does premium, quality, and original mean? Is it hour-long film dramas, talk shows, edited montages of YouTube humor? What is it? Is it music videos? The reality is all of these elements are defined by the audience's expectation for the programming they are seeking and the competition. In essence, the audience's expectation is different for every product, every genre, and every platform. This idea is proven by looking at the profitability of the top-grossing YouTube partners. Right? Annoying Orange can boast yearly earnings of $288,000. Let's see what that means for quality.
I do appreciate you boys volunteering to look after my remarkably creepy hotel.
Are you kidding? This place is amazing!
Yeah, should be terrifying.
I'm with Pear. Little scared. Hey, no jokes! Come
Different
on, guys.
level of
This
quality.
place is just what I need to finish my novel. The
A
great...
lot of viewers. Let's look at another project. Oops, I want to back up one.
You know what's awesome? Playing Christmas music in November.
Shut up! Oh, it's so good. Ah, damn, I could eat these all day, every day.
Hell yeah, man. 24/7, 365. There's only one way we can decide who gets the last pizza roll.
Staring
contest.
What?
I mean, yeah, staring contest.
All right, you know the rules. First person to blink.
Here's another great, I love this example. Really high video quality.
Dog goes woof, cat goes meow, bird goes tweet, and mouse goes squeak, cow goes moo.
But this is short form, right? And we've pretty much given away short form television for free. And we support it with an over-the-top model. Around the outsides, we add, advertisements from Google. Right? So while you're watching this, you're also taking in a little bit of ad models. Right? The consumer expects this for free, and probably that's the best model now because that's what they expect, and it's going to be hard to monetize this, right? From a subscription base. So you talk about the cost of creating this, right? It's a loss leader for advertising is the way they look at it. So for the time being, we're stuck with it. But what if you want to produce your own half-hour, hour, or live production where you can actually start to make some money? Right? Let's consider the cost of a one-hour episodic show in Hollywood. Using single-camera production, the average cost of a show is $1.6 million. That's the average, right? Premium shows can easily reach $6 million. With single-camera shooting, which is the most expensive shooting model, right? You have what I call the city on wheels. Everybody gets a truck. You get a truck for wardrobe, hair, makeup, for the gaffers, for you name it. Everybody has a truck. Then you have cumbersome setups. Like we had weather yesterday. It was so cold, but we'd be out there trying to shoot. And our the cameras get tired and they kind of bog up, right? And you have inclement weather and noise. Planes go by, etc. So you can see how something like what you're going to see right now costs so much money to produce.
Shooting Newton, you should come check it out.
Yeah, mostly cops, right?
And girls, that's the beauty.
Yeah, I think I'll pass, thanks.
Sure, why get drunk and late when you can hear a guy playing zither and maybe drink some Turkish coffee and sniff some patchouli or whatever the hell you do.
Gun! Gun!
So you can see multiple setups, days and days to shoot, all action-based. Very exciting, premium, high-end quality. Oops. And again, you've got your city on wheels. That's what they needed to do it. Their page count average, right, a single camera production page count, is a feature film is 1 to 3 pages a day. Nighttime drama is 7 to 10 pages per day. Let's consider Hollywood's other lower cost production model, 3-camera studio production, right? Here you have a purpose-built studio, a purpose-built booth, purpose-built cameras with skilled crews and et cetera. It's a controlled environment, it's economical, it's fast. Let's see what kind of the great comedy and drama that's been created with 3-camera production.
They're fast. Why? I kept pinching them to see what kind they were. This is the 4th department I've been in. Oh, I didn't do so well either. No.
All right, girls. Now, this is your last chance. If one piece of candy gets past you and into the packing room unwrapped, you're fired.
Yes, ma'am.
Let her roll!
Oh, this is easier. Yeah, we can handle this okay.
You're doing splendidly. Speed it up a little!
So you can see great comedies have been created with 3-camera. That was one setup. That was shot real time. Different Southland, the previous clip you saw, 4-day shoot, right? Which is better? They're both great, right? So this one was 1/1000th of the cost to edit, 1/1000th the cost to shoot, but it was still just as great. So you start to talk about 3-camera production, and you start to talk about how efficient could they make it. Well, for example, Patrick told you I work in soap operas. I've worked on The Young and the Restless, Days of Our Lives, As the World Turns, General Hospital. Our daytime dramas shoot an average of 137 pages a day, right? So let's look at what that means.
Fen, when Summer ran out on you, did she say where she was headed or who she might want to see?
Think hard, Fen. This is important.
Nick, he's told you everything he knows.
Fen, thank God.
You all right, buddy? He's fine. Still don't know where Summer is.
So you can see, one setup. So, the cost of the equipment's no longer the issue, and the prosumer is born. To me, prosumer is a play on professional and producer. They're talented people who use very sophisticated but affordable consumer gear to produce good enough quality for people to enjoy, from $100 GoPro cameras to $3,000 Nikon D800s, right, which I own. The prosumer can approximate anything from a film look to a reality look. Stuff I shoot on my little Nikon D800 is aired on networks. Right? Man on the Street interviews, I'm doing it with that. It's airing on HLN. Right? So we talk about the prosumer is now being co-opted by larger operations. Huffington Post has recently reported that the Independent and the Evening Standard have just launched a new television network. Right? It's a new television channel. It's called London Live. They equipped their stable of great print journalists, admittedly really great guys, right, with iPhones. They said, go out and shoot your video, do your own stories, right? And then they screened the work. And they weren't so surprised that journalistically it was outstanding because, of course, these are seasoned people who know what they're doing. What they were surprised with is they were broadcasting the iPhone video and it was being eaten alive. People loved it, right? So the technology was no longer the barrier. Now you've got a prosumer, a professional with consumer technology creating broadcast quality material. So my question is, why not take 3-camera production on the road, right? 3-camera production, I know, is very difficult to learn. But if technology is making this equipment available to the prosumer, why not take this 3-camera with you? Why not do it faster, cheaper, right? Used to be that it looked like this. You had to add a truck to the City on the Wheels, right? Oh, there he gets his truck too. You've seen him in MLB, NFL, all the trucks and the satellites and everything else. Right? So now it looks like this. Wireless cameras feed small flight packs. Lights are LEDs and they run off standard power. And what happens is the prosumer figures out that, wow, I don't need a high-def truck to do live sports. I don't need a high-def truck to do talks like this. Everything becomes content. Everything. Content becomes king. You start being able to shoot live events at a fraction of the cost. That's your entire high-def studio right there. This new technology effectively is making all interiors studios, right? Because it's quiet enough inside. I don't need the purpose-built location. Now, I can go, just like films, and I can get the reality of a coffee shop and shoot in a coffee shop, but I can do it in 3-camera, right? So, with a hybrid 3-camera approach, there are creative answers to every problem. If the project doesn't fit the guidelines precisely, you just make an effort and find a creative answer to it. Scripts won't be easily action-based. You're not going to do a shootout like you saw in Southland. You don't want to compete with that, right? Cast size isn't going to be huge. You're not going to have 4,000 people. You want to keep it pretty simple, right? You want to keep it like the scene with Lucy and Ethel. Great scene. You shoot in an interior on a stage if possible, and you shoot on location sparingly. You can take that little thing outside. You can shoot across a car. You can shoot walking down the street. A few post-production personnel, and you can finish on Final Cut Pro, Avid, Pro Tools. And now the prosumer can compete with almost every kind of television production. So what's old is new. We're taking our cue from theater, of which we're in a nice one. Why not commit to a rehearsal process as opposed to being on a shooting stage, what we call fax time, right? With a complete crew, and they've got a director sitting down with the actors and now talking about their motivation. Why not do that like theater? Do that beforehand. Do that right here. Then when you go out and shoot, you can be a little bit faster. So the upside is you have proof of concept, it's economical, it's more product, it's versatile and scalable. You can get bigger and smaller as the case may need. You maximize your options, and now you can stand behind a product for a long period of time because your cost output isn't as great, right? So now you can compete with most premium television if you need to. You have rapid production turnaround, your minutes instead of days, your days instead of weeks. your high-definition, digitally delivered quality, and you've got an order of magnitude cost savings. You've got time, quality, and price. You actually don't have to sacrifice one. The prosumer can now do what the networks cannot. They don't have to sacrifice. The big networks do. They sacrifice money. So you have dramatic value, you have radical high efficiency production. Now you can develop multiple projects on the same budget, right? You change the game. You no longer have to do any project management. It's not all or none. You don't have to put everything into one. You've got that. You can do, instead of one pilot, you do 10 or 100. Instead of one commercial, you do 20. You do them in different languages with different casts, same setups. You think outside the box. You do all of this, and you can afford to shoot them and start to reach these demographics because you have bandwidth to do it. The big trick now is you need transmedia distribution. Somebody on your team has to be platform agnostic, has to think, I need to drive viewers into all of these different avenues and figure out how to get the revenue back to the center, right? A certain percentage of your viewers will want chat and messaging boards. Give it to them, right? And populate it with chat. Others will want second screen participation, right? A little compendium to the viewing. They'll want the critique version or the comedy version or people sending it up. Start doing it, right? Still others will want to play games with it. So somebody on your team needs to create a game out of it, even if it's a trivia game. You find a way to reach the slice of audience. So some will even want printed media. Figure out a way to give them more printed media. So now you have an audience that you know exists, you have production costs and have processes in line and in control, and everything is costing a fraction for what the networks are doing, and you have a transmedia wizard on your team. How do you promote your show? That's the difference, right? Oh, the big networks, they can promote their shows. They have that advertising time. Well, the networks have that big money, and they use their own product to sell their own product. How do you compete, right? You use other forms of marketing. You use email and search engine optimization, and you use event marketing, and you go out and speak to people about it. And you press release and you direct mail, and you start to find out that those big, huge ad budgets are no longer relevant because on the small screen, there's this much smaller price. You can find just the right person to whom to market, and you get a greater result. It's throughput, it's click-put, right? You get a mobile ad, or you get a Google ad, and you say, I want to find women 18 to 23 who like snowboarding. Well, guess what? You can find them. So now you can sell your product that you produced to an audience that will actually subscribe to it, right? And you find another way to get more and more revenue. You're creating a world for them. Is this a lot of work? You bet. So, U.S. TV and U.S. online ad spending, let's look at what's projected to happen. On television, it's flattening out. By 2016, you're talking about $72 million. It's currently 60. Well, a little more than that, for 65, right? So now, you look at the online spending, and it's doubling between 2011 and 2016. And I'll bet you they've underestimated it. So, you have product analyzation, you have programming, and you have transmedia exploitation, and you look at your content. If you're a big network, you're going to still take pitches. That never goes away. You always want to hit the home run, and you know they're going to have people do it. But then you're also going to go, oh, wait, there's all these prosumers out there. I know that guy in Maine, he did a great talk show on bass, right? Or on lobster. And I know there's a lobster audience, so I'm going to go find them. Is it live? Do I go do it live? Or do I workshop and rehearse, right? And then from that, does it bubble up? So the big players are now fighting to figure out how to organize the prosumer market and then apply traditional television programming and methodology to that. In other words, how do they crowdsource their pilots? You are going to become their crowdsource. They need to integrate this idea of 3-camera jump studios. They're going to search out the content. They're going to funnel it upward into studio productions, the ones they think are good. And then they're going to cherry pick from that for high-end exploitation. You're going to have stars coming out of New Hampshire and Michigan. They're not going to be necessarily coming from Hawaii or Hollywood. They'll need to replicate this model as fast as they can and in as many markets as they can, and they need to vertically integrate this content across multiple platforms with ancillary marketing, and that is television 2.0. In the beginning, I asked, isn't there some young executive screaming in the boardroom, listen to me, your business is changing? Yeah, there are. And will the big media companies be able to adapt? Well, they've squeaked by so far with some radical disruption. This one forces them to totally reuse their profits and reinvent their business model, right? They need to look at the prosumer as a bigger bet. Right now, it's too small a bet for them. There just isn't a 100x return on their investment to it. That is your in. That's the innovator's in. They can get the small slice, and it's enough money. Right? It's profit to you. To them, it's not enough. Right? So, if you're willing to fail, to learn, and your goal is to have fun and make some money, not the profits that CBS, ABC, and NBC are going to make, right? And you want to move the needle for social good just a little bit every day, then television is a really good bet. YouTube has only been able to implement prosumer organization on a little level, short term. They're on the road to figuring something out. Maybe they can apply the rest of the methodology. Maybe. To go further with a baseball analogy, right? The big networks, in addition to their taking pitches and trying to hit home runs, they have to think in terms of creating a farm system. The prosumer is AAA, their 3-camera studios are AA, studio production, single cameras, A-ball, and then what they're doing right now, that's the major leagues, that's the big show, right? It's going to be fascinating to see who adapts, and my advice to you is to pick your niche. Pick what you want to do. Start up the food chain as high as you can, of course. We all want to do that, but if you have to start at the bottom, start right now, right? Because Henry Ford said, in my observation, most people get ahead during the time that others are wasting it, right? So start working right now. This is do-it-yourself television. It's the ultimate in home entertainment. Amazon's trying it, Netflix is thinking about it, YouTube's flirting with it, no one's perfected it yet. It's going to get a lot messier before it gets better. But my guess is it's on its way and it's going to fix itself organically. It is simply history repeating itself. We've come full circle. We're at the beginning of a new cycle of video entertainment. This time, the cost of getting in is lower. You can do it. The content needs are growing exponentially and the potential return on your investment is much bigger right now for you. Both major players in content creation and the prosumer are in an amazing position in history right now, and this is the new frontier. You only need 5 skills to set your own television studio. Maybe you only have one of those skills. I bet you look around you, another one right next to you. That person, they know how to do production or financing. The one down the row, or the guy you know on Facebook, they know the other 3. So now it's time to go out there and start making television. Questions? Yeah, I can't see, so.
Yeah, I'll try to help spot you.
Oh, it's going to keep creating content. It's going to be, in my opinion, it's going to have to go a lot of the way it's going in Britain. It's going to be a lot more crowd-funded. You know. Thank you. That was a great answer. Well, I always default to yes and, right? So I love them. It's a way to create some money. It's not necessarily the way I'm going to do it, right? Because I'm going to do it more of as a straight business funding instead of crowdfunding. You know, I'm going to give my investors a return. Kickstarter doesn't always give you much of a return financially. So I think that it's, again, a yes and. Yes. It has. They've needed to make more money, right. When I first started doing The Young and the Restless, I think we had 47 minutes and 30 seconds of program time. And by the time we're down to 38, right? Well, yes and no, but you see, since the beginning of time, the human craves. I mean, we all crave media. We crave to learn about the human condition. We crave melodrama. It's been the most popular genre since Aristotle. And so I don't believe that you can drive people away from what is an essential hunger. And so that they will go after that material. They may find, and they have found ways to get around the advertising model, right? They'll rip their own content, they'll, all that kind of stuff. Absolutely. And that's our job now, is to try to figure out how to get them, keep them. In television, you're always worried about the serialization of something. It can't be too disjointed or too much going on because I can't remember it next week, right? So, but it has to be just serialized enough that you keep you hungry, right? So you'll come back next week. I've got the hook. So I think that on the internet, you don't necessarily have to do that. You can give it all to them at one time and let them find it, right? And then you're going to do over-the-top advertising on top of that.
Other questions? Given that, in my opinion, TV is archaic, the way major stations of TV is archaic, because it is not meeting the demand. Most people now are demanding they will watch things when they want to watch it, and the broadcasters are broadcasting.
Right.
Do you think that they are adaptable enough to move out of that fixed position?
Their business model right now is completely reliant on the grid system and the traditional advertising. What you're going to see with the big networks, in my opinion, is that they'll cease to be an RF transmitter, right? And they'll continue to be content companies. And they'll start to follow the model that I've kind of put out here of looking for great content that then finds an audience and allows time for the audience to find it. And then based on that, they'll create an ad revenue and a subscription-based model. And no, it's not going to be grid programming. Absolutely. I think that there is a place for grid programming, curated grid programming, because as you may have experienced, I find it maddening on YouTube. It sometimes takes me longer to find something good than that something good is its duration, right? So I do think that there is a way to create channels for people that may not be time, that you may not be locked in time, but you're still on a grid and it's curated. And that's essentially what the big networks are doing. They're trying to curate for you 7 nights a week. I'm really not. And the reason I'm not is because Guatemala and various other places that I've been kind of working with are digging up and putting down fibers. And in one fiber, there's almost as much capacity as there is right now on the internet. And so with Moore's law, I mean, it might close down a little bit, but the amount of storage, if you will, is ever expanding at this point. So I don't believe that's going to be an issue, personally. Right. It's, in my opinion, that's probably a smaller control group, if you will, because it's actually borne out that that's not true. More people are seeking out content on the internet, video content, than ever before. And so they may be saying that, but they're watching something because the the entire internet is based on video saturation. See, now live is great. Live is it's its own thing. And that's going more the way app television is. You go on Apple, you see MLB, channel NFL. And the reason they're doing that is because it's timed advertising. It still works on the advertising model because you know that someone kind of has to watch the Super Bowl right now. And because they're watching the Super Bowl right now, if I'm releasing my movie tonight, that's the way I can guarantee I get to them at this moment in time. So live television is, I think, a huge growth industry. And I think that you're going to see a lot more. The Dodgers have their own network that's coming out in the fall. Every team is going to have its own network. Every MLB team, every NFL team, every NHL team, high school baseball in Texas is its own network waiting to happen. I can't see, sorry. Well, first of all, reality television is serialized, right? And reality television is scripted, right? So basically, reality television is a soap opera, but it's done more on an ad-lib basis, right? That is what it is. And they've couched it in reality because it might, and they did this a lot with video. Video looked like news. It used to look like news, and so it must feel more real. So then, because they did it on video, reality television was done on video because it was cheaper. So then they called it reality because it looked real, it felt real, and it made you think that you were watching something that was quote unquote real. And that, to me, that's the whole rise. And it was born out of economics. That's correct. That's exactly right. And I think that it's not done. There's a lot more to go in reality television. The internet is a great way to, even DirecTV just put on a network that's for your dog, right? They've got a whole channel. I think it's channel 352, right? And it's like snails on glass walking up and down. I sit there and I watch it and I laugh. My 7-year-old loves the channel. He just thinks it's fabulous, right? It's hilarious. And they all watch my dog to watch him watch the TV, right? And in the way I think, I go, oh, I should be videotaping my son watching the snail, watching the dog, because that's TV, right? And that's what I mean by reuse, repurpose, retool. Well, no, it doesn't. Right now, you are not going to, I got back from Dakar, and I can tell you right now, nobody's going to pay you any subscription at all, right? There, it's free. There, because it's brand new, they're on the ad revenue model, right? And they're on the original television model, which is I have a show, and I drive out to the Gambia, and I find a television station, and I go, here's my show, give me $50. And they do. Right? And then they air your show and you drive to the next. It's the Wild West. It's great.
Yeah, and we'll talk about what you're doing with the UN and Senegal.
Oh, yeah. This project is really unbelievable. What happened was a great guy, Alexander Radieu is his name. He's a French citizen, and he's also a citizen of Dakar and Senegal, and he's able to just magically move in and out of their world and speak to both the top end government all the way down to the guys building, potentially building his sets. And because he has that sort of acumen, he was able to do something that he self-professed doesn't know much about, television. So he came out and he started looking for consultants. And he's creating a 50-episode novella that he has put together with NGO funding. And I think he's going to change the face of Africa. I think he's going to create a television industry, and it's going to be the first industry, and I hate the word, this is kind of inflammatory, but it's the first industry in which they won't be enslaved. It's their own industry. It's going to be homegrown. They're going to make it. They're going to make their own shows. They're going to entertain each other. They have the bandwidth to do it with the smartphones and everything else, and it's just so exciting. I think it's really fabulous.
Great.